Good morning. You listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning, my guest is Thomas Baert. I've got him calling from Belgium today. Thomas, how you doing?
Doing great, Kemp. How are you?
I'm good. I really appreciate this time. I want to talk about these Chinese tariffs, and every few minutes something else is happening. We just got word this morning that China is retaliating against last week's move where the U.S. has raised the tariff on $200 billion worth of goods from 15% to 25%, and now China is saying well, they're going to do the same thing on about $60 billion worth of goods. Before we get into all that, you've been a professional in the flooring business your whole adult life. You got finished with school in Belgium, and you were friends with Carl Buchart, and you came over to Dalton for a while and worked with Carl, and then eventually you ended up going to Shanghai in China, and you opened up a 2 million square foot factory there outside of Shanghai, and you've been growing and diversifying. And we did an interview from Domotex, Germany, and one of your newest products is a MGO product, a mineral core product with a melamine top, and that's called Tenacity, right?
That's correct. A lot of great things still going on, even in a more difficult world.
And you also have protected yourself against these tariffs by moving into other countries. You now have an operating factory in Taiwan and also working on some in Vietnam as well, right?
Yeah, basically last September when this whole thing, when we started seeing that this thing was there to stay, the whole conflict between the countries and the nations, we wanted to act quickly and set up our own vertically integrated operations. One is in Taiwan, fully working, and then one also in Vietnam, one for laminate and one for PC in Vietnam. So basically 3 facilities that are fully vertically integrated facilities specifically for the U.S. market.
Okay. And one other thing I haven't said, when you first started your factory outside of Shanghai, it was called China Floors. You now call that CFL Flooring, and you also have a brand here in the United States called Firmfit, right?
Yeah, our main brands are Firmfit, Novocore, and actually Tenacity, and as well for laminate Audacity. So these are our main names in the U.S. market.
And you also, interestingly enough, own a small piece of Domotex Asia. I mean, you're an entrepreneur all the way through and through, right?
I think we are doing what many people are doing, and we have a lot of gratitude for the little success we've been able to have the last couple of years, Kemp.
Well, it's important that I mentioned that association with Domotex Asia because while you can move factories, you still have a very, very invested base in commerce between the United States and China, the two world powers. So this is a very important topic for you, right?
I do think it's important, and I don't think we want to get this into a conversation of actually what is just going on today and the fights between presidents and all that. I think this is much more interesting is to put everything in a wider, bigger perspective. I think our generation here is faced with a major change of international orders. We've seen the last 100 years basically being the century of the West, of let's call it the American century. This is not something to disappear. I mean, China is a rising power threatening to displace a ruling power. This is going to come and go, and I expect this rivalry to have a big impact on the way we have to do business as business people in our specific segment. So I think it's a very big challenge that will change and shape the world. So I don't think that we can expect a solution in the next months or years. I'm expecting this to be there for the next 10 years, basically.
So one of the big questions that I think a lot of people are wondering, because this thing has ebbed and flowed with a lot of energy in the last couple of weeks, some people think this might be over in a month or so because I've heard, the stock market hasn't reacted wildly yet. Many people thought when something like this happened, the stock market would do a major correction. So some people think this is going to be resolved. What is your thought?
I invite all our readers, all your viewers today to Google a Harvard professor. His name is Graham Allison, and you can see some great TED Talk on him. Basically, he's explaining this whole change of international order, and I think that even if there's an agreement specifically on the tariffs right now, that could come into place. I mean, I think that the rivalry is going to be played in many different ways. You have IP issues, you have dumping cases, you have all kinds of things that people can do against each other. And again, the main question is, why is this happening? And I think this is the new century of the West understanding that certain things are changing in the world. And I think we all have to be very careful in having very strong opinions regarding to what's going on today. And I think we can learn a lot from history when looking at today's situation.
Yeah, let me just weigh in on one quick topic, if you will, and let's have a quick little debate, if you don't mind. Now, I know you pretty well, and I've been to your booths in Germany and in China, and you actually sometimes will have a hard door and a guard at your booth in China because there's a tendency over there for people to come in and take a look at what you're doing and immediately imitate that. And yet we go to Europe where there's a little bit more of a decorum around, this is your idea, and we'll let you have that as your idea. So I've got to admit there's a little bit of a copycat philosophy with Chinese that I think that's what we're trying to fix. But what's your say on that?
I do agree that basically in China, I would make a segment. I would make two groups of people and companies in China. You have one that are very, very creative and innovative, and that actually have been the drive behind everything that is going on in the hybrid flooring category. This is a very good example. Let's face the reality. As Westerners, we like to believe that we are the inventors of everything and that the Chinese are copycats. I believe that you have a big portion of our industry, specifically mainly in China, that are using China as an innovation paradise. These are the companies that are coming as a tsunami to the world, to the economic world, and are basically changing that industry. At the same time, you have a whole group of Chinese companies that indeed are copying remarkably. So, of course, we have to protect ourselves against that. But I think the whole tariff situation right now is in many times are being mixed with IP and all that. But I think the IP situation in general has in China has improved a lot. IP issues are being respected more and more. The government is supporting that. So I think there is still a little bit of a misunderstanding there in the West how China sees IP in general.
Well, that's interesting. And as a counterpoint, I do know that the Tile Council of North America took the position of what I said a minute ago. And yet, if you consider the multi-layered flooring category, most of that innovation has been developed in China, and it's still the primary source for it. So I guess there's both sides, and like many people would say, one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole bunch, right?
Right, exactly. Everybody who understands the industry really well knows that at this stage the innovation has been coming from China. I mean, we don't like it too much when this is being told to us. I mean, MGO is just the next step, and this is just a reality. I think the question is how we react to that, so that we all can come out of that as winners. I still strongly believe in trade and in creating opportunities for distributors, for retailers, for manufacturers in all different fronts. And I don't think that a big trade war is going to create a lot of stability and economic confidence to the future. I would say that the biggest threat that we all have is that this whole trade war can result in an economic recession, triggering a worse situation for all of us.
Okay, Thomas, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks for spending time with our listeners. Again, been talking to Thomas Baert, who today's in Belgium, but he's the president of CFL Flooring and Firmfit, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.